My name is Rachel Rofe. I created this show because I wanted to help you see that if you have a choice, you can choose a better life. If you're listening to this podcast, you're in a pretty fortunate position. You have free will, ability to connect to the internet, and access to all kinds of new education. This podcast is meant to help you make the most of your good fortune. We talk with all kinds of people here from all walks of life because I want you to see that no matter what your situation, there's always a way to create a life that you're proud of. Hello everyone, today we're here with Jeannine Yoder. Jeannine is a New York Times featured celebrity life coach, Broadway starlet, and founder of MentorMasterclass.com and JeannineYoder.com. Jeannine has 10 plus years of experience as a triple threat performer, risk taker, life coach, and mentor. She leads up-and-coming women thought leaders in the US, UK, Colombia, Thailand, Nigeria, Australia, and rapidly expanding worldwide. Her clients regularly score their dream job, time and location freedom, media attention, and sometimes a six-figure self-run coaching business. Jeannine loves the challenge of blending business with community, performance, and feminine power. She's been featured living her purpose in the New York Times, Identity Magazine, the Coach's Training Blog, Well and Good New York City, and on ABC's Gossip Girl, VHS, and in theaters across the U.S. and New York City. Her favorite roles include Audrey in Little Shop of Horrors, Adelaide in Guys and Dolls, Sugar in Some Like It Hot, and Pippi in the Burlesque Sisters sitcom. I invited Jay to be on my podcast because I think she has a fabulous blend of practicality and intuition. She's an amazing coach, and I know she has a powerful story to share. She's overcome a lot and has created an amazing lifestyle business and just has a life that a lot of people would dream of. She has a wonderful marriage, a thriving business, great health, and lots of fulfillment. So we're going to dig in and learn some of her secrets today. So Jeannine, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Rachel. I love your voice. It's such a pleasure. It must be such a pleasure for your listeners to just, your tone of voice and your heart really comes through. So it's so fun to spend this time with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, as you know, the intention behind A Better Life is to show people that if they have a choice, they can choose a better life. So in that spirit, can you take a minute to share with us some of the things you're most proud of in your life right now that you've created?
Yeah, I used to not be very good at answering this question, but it's something currently I'm much better at bragging about the things that feel really good, which surprisingly I think can be hard for us sometimes. With that, I would say the things I'm most proud of right now is I really made it out of the hood, like what Snoop Dogg would call the hood growing up is where I was. And I really made it out of a family that is lost in addiction into a life where I really feel like I'm living a dream life, and more of that keeps coming true every day. I'm proud of making it on Broadway despite the fact that I am terrified of rejection and auditioning, and was able to book a show on Broadway and have that dream come true. Super proud that I get to be of service of women all around the world and really helping them find their dream job. I'm really proud to be married to my husband. He's an amazing man, and I'm so grateful to be in a healthy relationship. And most recently, I'm super proud to have paid off my student loans, which I felt like was something I was so afraid of having always. And I had a dream of paying them off before age 30. And this year, last year, I made six figures in my own business that I created, was able to pay off those loans, and that feels really good too.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I know that you didn't just wake up with all those amazing accomplishments, and there are so many, and that you really worked hard to get to where you are. So can you describe a particularly notable time in your life when you felt like things weren't going the way that you wanted, or maybe you felt trapped, and just what was going on then?
Yeah, before I moved to New York City, I guess I was 21. I was working 3 jobs. I was working 9 to 5 as an appraisal coordinator at a mortgage company, and then going straight to being a server at Outback Steakhouse at night. And then on the weekends, I was studying to train to be a masonry inspector, because that's what my dad did. And I had no other idea of what I wanted to do. I had done theater all my life growing up, but I had learned that wasn't going to pay the bills. So I ended up stuck in these 2 jobs that I had zero passion for. It was just to pay the rent and pay the bills. And And then I was studying thinking I could do masonry inspection because it's what my dad did, which if you guys don't know what that is, it's like working on the construction sites to be the inspector that approves that the masonry has gone up. So it couldn't be further from anything that has to do with my zone of genius or passion. You know, a lot of my money, I was working nonstop 14-hour days, just living paycheck to paycheck. I was overweight from stress and completely uninspired. A lot of my money was going to just like bailing my mom out of jail or giving money to my dad to pay off his debt. And then the rest was just going to try to pay my rent so that I could live out of my own and try to separate from my family life. And I just felt completely trapped. And I felt like even living with my boyfriend at the time, it was kind of the only way I could get out of the house was for us to move out together. I wasn't in love with him anymore or attracted to him, but we were staying together because we were living together. So just every area of my life, in career and relationships, in my body and my family, I just felt totally trapped and stuck in like a negative loop and no idea how I would get out of that or if there was even a better way to live.
Geez, I had no idea about any of that.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's incredible that it's now less than a decade later and you're thriving in all of those areas. I mean, obviously you had to make some choices to get to where you are now. What were those choices? How did you start digging yourself out of that?
You know, Rachel, I was always in love with personal development and empowerment. I mean, when my girlfriends were crushing on Leonardo DiCaprio, I was crushing on Tony Robbins, who, if anyone doesn't know who he is, he's an amazing empowerment and life coach. I think he really kind of was the first life coach I ever heard of before I knew what coaching was. I used to listen to his CDs when I would drive in traffic to work, and I would read his books and things. You know, I would just listen. I only just listened. And I thought like, oh, this is an amazing man who gets these tools, but I'm too far stuff. And then I heard this quote somewhere. I don't remember where or who said it, but it was, the greater the risk, the greater the achievement. And I remember hearing that, and I thought sitting around listening is not going to change anything. But I had all of these resources and tools available to me, just reading all these self-help books and things, and I'd been accumulating it for years, and I just decided that I was going to switch into action despite my fear, or despite that it felt completely out of my comfort zone, or the stories that I told myself that I wouldn't be able to survive if I, quit that job or left that boyfriend or applied for a loan to go to school. And so I just really hung with all my might to that quote, the greater the risk, the greater the achievement. And I started looking for the places in my life where I could go from comfort to risk. And then it kind of became a game of like, how scared can I be and how challenging can it be to choose risk over comfort? And that's kind of where it started. That was the shift that started happening. The first risk that I took was I auditioned for a musical theater school in New York, and I was completely terrified. And I just went to the audition in LA anyways, even though I had no idea how I could afford the school or leave all three of those jobs. And I broke up with my boyfriend and figured that I would make the rent on my own so that I could get out of that relationship that wasn't serving me. And I asked him to move out, and I was terrified that I would never find someone that would love me like him, or that I was making a huge mistake, but I just took the risk and did it anyway. And then when I got into the school in New York, I applied for the loan, $50,000 loan, not knowing how I was going to pay it back, but taking the risk to just leave those jobs behind and get to New York City and focus on something that I loved. So I took the risk and applied for the loan, got the loan, and then took the risk and moved to New York. And I think that quote has carried me through so many moments in my life where I just had that choice to stay in comfort or do the thing that kind of terrified me and take the risk. And I just remembered the greater the risk, the greater the achievement. So I kept choosing the risk and trusting myself that it would equal achievement. And I think that over time, like decision after decision, just baby step to baby step, that's translated into completely overhauling my life into really what feels like achievement after achievement.
Wow. Okay, so your father thinks you're going to be a masonry inspector. You think you're going to be a masonry inspector. And so how are people responding to all this? Like, you tell your boyfriend, you must have auditioned for the school before you broke up with him, right? So, and this is not making logical sense, because you're saying you're applying for the school, and then you're breaking up with your boyfriend. You don't know how you'll pay for the school. Now you're giving, what are you going to do if you lose your jobs? But now you're saying, I'm going to give up half the rent. So how are people around you responding to all of this?
What's so funny about that question is I think that the other shift that occurred is I stopped caring how other people were responding. I think I started really tuning in and listening to myself and honoring my desires and thinking about what I felt I was really capable of without measuring that against my father's expectations or my boyfriend's feelings. I really started to tune into putting my own feelings, desires, and dreams first, and thinking about that in the sense of the greater good, because I was miserable and I wasn't spending any time with anyone that I loved anyways. I was working nonstop and completely unhappy and sort of hiding. So I think when you ask me that question, I can't really tell you how people were responding. I look back and I feel the support because I think that's what I was looking for. I was looking for anyone that would have been supportive. And surprisingly, my boyfriend was supportive. He knew how miserable I was. I guess the secret was I didn't tell him that he was moving out because we were breaking up. I said I just needed my space. So I made the easier adjustment. I didn't go straight for the breakup. I used the space card. Yet my dad, I think, was really terrified and was not excited about me leaving home. I had to forge that battle in some really difficult conversations with him, but my willingness to share that I was really passionate about making these changes, that I was not willing to live this life anymore, and that I really wanted to go after my dreams and take the risk while I had the opportunity to. And he came around and he became supportive, but it definitely wasn't easy at first, and it took a lot of emotional conversations, but coming from a place of power and confidence in myself to be able to have those conversations instead of, weakening back or not being honest about what was really true for me.
Got it. I'm curious, was there ever a time that you made an out of comfort zone leap that you regretted it?
Yes, there was a show contract. It was an audition that I went on when I first graduated musical theater college in New York. I had kind of a bad feeling about this show. It seemed like not the kind of people that I wanted to work with. It didn't pay very much, and it was a really long contract that would take me out of the city. And I didn't trust my instinct on that. I sort of said, I took the risk from a place of not trusting the uneasy feeling and taking a risk that the uneasy feeling might be wrong. And when I say uneasy, it was different than the excitement of fear of, can I do this? And it was more about, I don't know if this feels aligned. And even though it didn't really feel aligned and it wasn't my passion at the time and it wasn't what I really wanted for my life, to be on the road and to be traveling with that kind of show, I chose to do the contract anyways and took the risk. And it was a hard experience of being in the performing world. It just kind of backfired.
Yeah, I hear you. So, but that sounds like a really good learning lesson you got from that, is just trust your instincts, huh?
I think you can tell the difference, and now I relate to it like this when I'm trying to make a decision. If I feel into my body and what I'm sensing in making that decision, does it feel expansive, like my energy can stretch out and I can open my arms wide and there's opportunity that feels exciting? Or does it feel almost inside like a wrung out rag where it's like I'm kind of twisting and forcing myself into something? And when I tune into that, it seems to guide me better in the direction of expansive arms open is a yes. It can still be scary and you can still have doubts that you're capable of doing it or you don't know how everything's going to work out, but you feel that sense of openness in your heart, versus when you're coming up against a decision, trying to decide if it's fear or if it's right, and it just feels like you're wringing out a rag, forcing it, and you don't really sense the expansion, but it's just something you feel like you should do or you should force yourself to do. And so I absolutely learned from that experience the difference between what taking a risk looks like when it's intuitively correct and on the right path, and when it's forcing yourself to do something that may not be aligned.
I'm so glad you shared how to discern the difference. That was actually going to be my next question. And I think that's such a good way of looking at it. And it makes me curious. Have you ever had the experience where you feel really expansive about something and then you don't, or maybe you do again, or just like it feels like back and forth?
I don't have the experience of the expansion feeling back and forth, but I do have the experience of my fears taking over my ability to feel the expansion, if that makes sense. I'll know I can feel the difference between an expansive idea in the sense that it does feel aligned with my desires and what I want to create and who I want to be and the life I want to experience. But then my mind gets so loud with all of the limiting thoughts or beliefs that come up that try to overpower even being able to sense that expansiveness. So I definitely have experiences like that. Does that make sense for your question?
Absolutely. So what do you do when that happens?
One of the coolest tricks I've ever learned, it's kind of a coaching tool. And I think it'd be cool to just share the tool with you and everyone so then you can like personalize it. When I think about beliefs now, or when I hear that voice, I have a new relationship with it. So I know that there's not that voice, those fears that come up, those beliefs that I'm reminded of that live inside of me. That's not all of me, and they're not factual. So it's just sort of a reframe around that. And then I learned when I first became a life coach this tool about how to help clients shift their limiting beliefs. And I was so excited because obviously I applied it to myself first. So if you can visualize, a belief is just like a table. The top of the table is the belief that you have. Let's say my belief is that if I become an entrepreneur, I'll have to work hard and I'll never get to travel. That's my belief, and that's my fear about quitting my job and becoming an entrepreneur. The reason that I believe that so firmly is because of the legs of the table. And the legs of the table that hold up that belief are just simply experiences that we've personally had in our life. Whatever we've seen happen to us or people close to us or the community that we live in or the society and culture that we live in, they support those beliefs. And the truth of the matter is that we have a limited view. Like if you put your hands up in front of you like a frame and you hold it like thumb to thumb and your index fingers up, you'll see what you can see in that frame. And then if you were to tilt that frame, like move your hands like over to the left, you'd see that now you have this horizontal frame and there's different things in your view. So our beliefs are really limited just by what we are able to see and who surrounds us, which doesn't mean they're factual. It just means we haven't seen the full picture always, or we don't have alternative resources to reflect on. So once I started to see that a belief is just that, I started to realize that we can actually search for other legs to support a new belief. So if I wanted to believe that, if I know that the belief that becoming an entrepreneur means that I'll have to work hard and I'll never get to travel is holding me back from wanting to do that, then I would want to form the new belief that entrepreneurship equals freedom and adventure and the time freedom to travel. So to test that belief, I would start looking to put new legs to that table so that it has as many legs as the current belief that I have. So I'll start looking for people. I'll look for, if I hear about a successful entrepreneur, I'll listen to that podcast. If I know if a friend and her dad is a successful entrepreneur, I'll ask to sit down with him to lunch. I'll research people who have the experience and the story that they can travel and have time freedom. And then suddenly, as I start adding those things into my vision and my sight, I start to strengthen that belief within myself. And the whole reason that beliefs are important is because beliefs are what decide the potential we see in any situation. So if you imagine that beliefs are the foundation and then there's an arrow that leads straight to potential. Potential is going to determine the kind of action that we're going to take. If we see great potential, we'll take a certain kind of action versus if we see no potential, we'll have a different energy behind our action. And action is the only thing that leads to results. And results always strengthen or weaken our beliefs and add legs to that table. So if I want to have better results in my life, my first most valuable place to start is by looking at those beliefs that I have, realizing that they don't have to be the be-all, end-all, and then trying to support a new empowering belief by finding the resources to add legs to that table. And this is the same reason why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, because if you have poor beliefs and you see all around you that everyone is struggling and that it's hard to survive and that the only job out there is to be a drug dealer, then the potential you see to be successful is limited. And so the action you take is you say, okay, then I'll do that drug deal because that's what everybody else does and that's the life that's been given to me. And the results are you end up getting in trouble with the law, perhaps addicted yourself, and you keep continuing that cycle. And same with the rich who are born into riches and they see that there's absolutely potential out there possible. So the potential they see leads them to take greater action, and that action leads to bigger results sometimes. But it doesn't have to be that way if you start with your beliefs and you choose to see that just what's in your peripheral vision might not be the be-all, end-all. And if you start to kind of create that new belief, then you have the opportunity to use that cycle to benefit you and to go from, poor to rich when we're talking about not just financially, but, spiritually and mentally and emotionally go from poor to rich in that area. Does that make sense, Rach?
Oh my gosh, that's so good. That is awesome. Makes so much sense. And I think that can help people so much because really, and like we have a Facebook group, a Better Life Facebook group, and someone was talking about how, oh my gosh, what was the belief? It was, I forget exactly what the belief was, but it was something that wasn't serving her. And so we were saying, like, even if you can just find one instance of that not being true, then that belief is then rendered false. But then we were talking about just like adding to the table and more and just adding that into your worldview I love. And it also just makes me think of, with my ex, we made this long list of all these different things that I wanted to attract in a guy. And it was just like, I don't remember if I mentioned it on the podcast yet, but at the time I was eating mostly raw food and I wanted him to be a raw foodist and I wanted him to read like David Data and he had to go to this warrior camp that I went to and all this stuff. And I ended up, I posted on my blog and everyone was just like, oh, you need two guys basically for this and you're delusional. And I ended up attracting that exact guy, except for he met every single criteria on my list except for his eyes were green instead of blue. I mean, it was just amazing. And then what happened was we were together for a few years and we ended up getting married and then annulled 7 months later.
That's 7 minutes.
I know, it basically feels like it. So I realized then that I thought that I knew what I wanted and I got exactly what I wanted. But the thing is, there's so much that we don't know. Like you're saying, there's such a bigger frame and the universe has a bigger imagination than we do. So I like the idea of just going through and picking whatever is the most empowering. So with Don now, I basically wrote this list of all these feelings that I wanted to feel. And I want to feel safe. I want to feel like, he's my rock and all this different stuff. And he came and I didn't really know how to I didn't define it he has to have blue eyes or green eyes or anything, but just the general. And I feel like magic happened. So I think that's great. You gave people a really practical way to have more empowering beliefs.
And what I love about what you shared, Rachel, is that you expanded your ability for what you could believe was possible for you. So instead of just believing that what was possible for you was a blue-eyed guy who, had 6-inch arms or whatever, really small arms, but you expanded to the range of what you can feel, which opened the door to even more. It was almost like you rid yourself of the limitation that you already set by playing smaller with what the universe could bring even more to you. It's really a powerful story.
Yeah, thank you. And I like that you mentioned feelings because that brings me to ask you about the way that I met Jeannine. I'm actually in Nisha Moodley's Freedom Mastermind class, and Nisha has Jeannine go on monthly calls with us, just mastermind calls, talking. She's an incredible coach. And then she also does this goal setting stuff, which I'm kind of obsessed with. Because I'm so big on goals. I don't know if you knew, I actually just wrote a book on different goal setting things. And I'm just so in love with the way that you outline your goal process. Can you just share a little bit with people about how you do yours? Because, dude, I love them.
Absolutely. I think that the most important thing about goal setting is that you actually are really specific about what you want. And there's also a whole process involved with kind of manifesting and celebrating and being sure to be in tune with what it is that you're calling in. So we could stop at just setting the goal, but the thing is we don't learn our behaviors around it, is that there needs to be celebration involved, and honoring ourselves every time that we do follow through is what allows us to continue to set goals and follow through on them. So I like to start with your core desired feelings, how it is that you want to feel, and then what your goal is for the month that's in line with those core desired feelings. So I use the SMART goal technique, which just means specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So you would voice your goal in the sense of making sure that you follow that SMART goal technique. So that would look like saying specifics. Like if you wanted to lose weight, you wouldn't just say, I want to lose weight. You would say, I want to lose 22 pounds by Friday, September 16th by eating green smoothies every day and prioritizing body movement over emotional eating. That would be the specific way to set the goal. And then you want to know why that goal is important to you. Because if you don't know why, then you don't bridge the gap to the purpose behind what you're doing. So you want to make sure you're clear why that goal is important to you. And then pain and pleasure is the natural key to motivation. So if our pain and pleasure associations in our mind are off, we won't actually be motivated to do anything. So that means if you're associating more pain to taking action than more pleasure, then you're going to find it really hard to create movement. So you want to ask the question, what pain will you experience as a result of not following through on this commitment? So instead of the pain of what it might take for you to take action, you actually utilize the pain of how you're going to feel if you don't follow through, if you don't achieve this goal. And then you harness the pleasure, which is how will this positively impact every area of your life if you do follow through. So we use that pain and pleasure. And then you want to check in, is this commitment in line with your core desired feelings? And then you want to, if it doesn't, you want to creatively reframe the goal so that it is in line. So for example, if my core desired feeling is joy and freedom, and then the way that I'm planning to lose weight is a strict diet that limits everything, then I want to redefine how I'm going to reach that goal because it's not actually in line with my core desired feeling of freedom. And then I like to look at where you're trying to control too much to your goal. So this is a pretty hefty goal process, but it's really balanced. So the next step is to just look at where are you holding on too tight and how can you ask the universe for support. So if it's I'm trying to control my weight with no support anywhere else, I like to ask a question of the universe to bring in an openness in my heart to see how can I find resources around me and not try to, manage this all on my own. So I form a question. It just has to be an open-ended question. So with the example that we're using, it could be something like, what will make it easy for me to make healthy choices that I love this month? What will make it easy for me? And I just ask it, not knowing the actual answer. And what happens usually is when you open your heart up like that and ask the universe for support, it will reveal ways and ideas to you. Either just they'll come up in coincidence in your life, or you'll have a thought or an idea that you might not have thought of if you just didn't give yourself the space to ask the question. And then I set that deadline, that goal, and I come back at the end of the month and I say, did I follow through, yes or no, so I can see, am I actually showing up for myself the way that I desire? And if I did, then I make sure to celebrate that I achieved that goal by really celebrating who I've become in the process and why that goal was important, and coming up with a way to celebrate, whether that's sharing it with a friend or doing something nice for myself.
I just love it. There's a couple things that I've done for years that I've really liked. And so that it was very similar to what you did, except for I like the add-ons a lot of just the celebration. So in our group, we have a spreadsheet where we all go through and we give our goals. And then at the end of every month, Jeannine will look through and she'll make us a video celebrating us. And I get so excited for that video. Just go ahead, Jay, read out my goals. Tell everyone I got them done. I want to hear it.
Okay, so something that everyone needs to know about Rachel, though, is that of all the people, I think there are 18 women in the group, and I get down to her part in the spreadsheet. I can't even see in the spreadsheet because I have to click, because she sets so many goals, and she usually always follows through on all of them. I mean, really, it's amazing the way that you prioritize your goals, and you must be a master at this, and it's obvious that you've been studying it because every month almost we celebrate like the biggest list of goals I've ever seen, and you really have to see those through. So you must have some really amazing secrets to share.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just love them. Especially, I don't know, it's just fun when I have idle time. It's like I can either go on my phone and like play backgammon or something, or just go do something. I think one thing that I definitely want to take a cue from you on is just scheduling more time for sisterhood. I'm really excited about that. And actually, I was going to ask you, like, what is a specific action step, and maybe it is scheduling time for sisterhood, that you take to make your life better?
Well, sisterhood is definitely one of those. I would say the most consistent action step is my daily ritual. Every morning I have a ritual that I use, and actually, if anyone wants to access it, I give a guide to creating. I think that your ritual should be unique to you, and I think that your ritual should tune into your unique belief system and your patterns so that you're consciously tuning into those each morning, and then proactively snapping yourself into the kind of behavior and the kind of beliefs and the kind of relationship with yourself that's important. Because otherwise that can be so easily dictated by outside experiences and people. And I think first thing in the morning, it's our opportunity to really tune in and find ourselves. If anyone listening wants to go to JeannineYoder.com, you can enter your name and email and get that guide for free. And it's the same ritual that I use every morning, Rachel. And basically, it helps to clearly identify what it is that I want for my day and remind me of the values that I'm moving toward and the things that I'm moving away from, and set myself up for adding those legs to the table of my beliefs so that they're not entering into my decisions if they're not the empowered beliefs that I'm moving toward. So I would say my daily ritual is one of the most important, and I would follow that up with sisterhood. I really feel like having a community of like-minded women has changed my life, because I no longer feel like I have to be alone and that I have to fight this battle or do all of this growth by myself, but I can actually open up and share with a sister what I'm feeling and what I'm scared of and what I'm working toward, and ask for support around that, and then also have a space to go give love and support. So I really feel the amount that we're giving out is the amount that we receive back, and I feel like sisterhood and community is a space for me to practice that. And that just looks like I have a date on my calendar every week, Tuesdays at 4 p.m. I have a little sister circle with some of my closest girlfriends, and we get on with the intention of sharing what's bothering us or what's coming up for us or where we need support. And we all chime in for each other. We get 20 minutes each to kind of ramble on about what it is. And then they're there to support me and I'm there to support them. And I just feel like magic happens in those circles.
Absolutely. And for guys who are listening, just you could do brother circles too. Yeah, anything like that is just so helpful. And I find just with the circles, it's so nice to alleviate the stress from your partner having to be your be all end all. And just being, I love sister circles. It's so nice to go through, and if something's bothering you, to be able to just verbally vomit and get it out and release it.
Sometimes that's all you need. And that's the cool thing about having a circle too. And they don't have to be just women and just men. I find that it's nice because then there's no women are happy spiraling and just sharing into emotions. And typically the masculine energy is more about fixing the problem. So it can be really powerful to merge a circle with men and women. And it also has its own powers, having just brotherhood with brotherhood and sisterhood with sisterhood. But probably be amazing if you have one of each, honestly.
Yeah, that's true. They can have...
Being able to ask for support how you want it. Like if what you want to do is vent and just get it off your chest, then amazing. Then we'll be here to listen to that. And if what you need is actual strategy about something to do, then being able to say that that's how you need support. I think one of the biggest lessons is learning to not do it alone, but also learning to ask for support the way that you really need and desire it, and having people in your life that are willing to show up for you in that way.
That's a really great point. That's a really, really good point. Just like sometimes if I need Don, sometimes I'll say to Don, my boyfriend, just, can you be a rock for me for a second? And he'll say yes. I'll say, I'm going to just go vent. When you're done, I just need you to say you're right. Like, that's it. Or whatever it is, but just being able to get that done. Or like sometimes he'll ask me for a step and it's just like, how do you want me to listen to this? Do you want me to tell you that this is great, or do you want me to give you feedback? Like, and sometimes he'll say like, just say that this is great. Sure, no problem. Great job.
It's so amazing. That's all we need. I remember one time in a sister circle, one of the girls just said, I just feel like today I need you to compliment me and tell me how awesome I am. I was like, that's the best request ever. Why don't we do that?
I was on that call. It was great. Oh, I love it. So one of the questions I love to ask people is, I just want our listeners to know that you're a real human. And so all humans have everyday struggles, and we never stop evolving. So what's something right now that you're working through in your life, and how are you getting through it?
Yeah. So, one of the things that comes up, I would say it's not a daily thing, but I'm definitely experiencing it right now. I've had a big rise in my business this year, and I've had a huge financial growth. I mentioned I paid off my loans this year, and my first year last year making 6 figures. And I feel like what I'm starting to notice as I make those financial growths is this allowing myself to raise the upper limit. This can best be looked into it if you're curious what an upper limit is. There's a book by Gay Hendricks called The Big Leap, and he talks about how we all just have these ceilings that we put based off our life experience or belief systems or things about like how much happiness and success and joy we're willing to feel at any moment in our lives. And I think that in this personal growth world, I'm just kind of massively daily stretching those limits, and I definitely hit that ceiling sometimes. I think a lot of that comes around the fear, my family still struggles financially and with addiction, and I have a hard time putting in boundaries of how much chaos I accept from other people's choices. In this case, with my mom, she's in and out of jail often, and she's sometimes starving and needs money for food because she's spent it all on pills, or, really a lot of chaos and trouble happens in her life. And because she's in my family, that filters in, and that energy leaks into me trying to stay in my positive state and my growth state. And I often have to make the choice, do I send her money or do I invest that in my business? Do I allow myself to keep growing, even though I'm afraid that the more I grow, the more people might ask of me, the more that people might come to me like begging for things from me? I think that's part of my upper limit, is how do I manage that energy? And it can be my biggest struggle on a day-to-day basis and my greatest teacher. I think it's really the reason that I am who I am. I really believe in taking ownership of our lives and being able to work through our problems and to respect that space in ourselves and trust ourselves that we can work through things. And I think I watched that with my mom, her struggle so much with that. And my deep devotion comes now, in self-compassion to allow myself to continue to expand. So I constantly have to check in. Am I willing to expand the amount of time that my whole life goes well? Am I willing to expand the amount of money that I have in my life? Am I willing to expand my capacity to set boundaries and take care of myself and let other people, let my mom take care of herself? That's not easy. It's really consistent work for me. And that's kind of like the behind the scenes picture of the success, I guess, is that as you grow, people often want to think that you have something to offer them. And that can be really hard, because as you're expanding and growing, that means my service is growing. The amount of women that I'm serving is growing as well. So I'm holding space for a lot of people. So boundaries become really important, and just really tuning into that ceiling that I have and my capacity to hold that from a really empowered and compassionate space.
That's such a good thing to bring up. And for those of you listening, if you haven't listened to the podcast yet about why we sabotage our happiness, that goes over the upper limiting stuff too. And it's so powerful. I'm so glad that you brought it up. And yeah, absolutely. I've had that too. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that. Even this morning, I was writing to the mastermind, and I was having problems with my family about how much do I give them, and feeling like it's like never enough kind of thing. So I think that just really, that's very powerful. And you make a good point also about just the more that you're making is also the more that you're serving. Yeah, so that's really, really good stuff. And yeah, I wonder if it's probably something that's always going to be, to a degree, we have to keep working with, huh?
Yeah, I mean, if you figure out how to get that end in sight, you should help me, Rachel.
Okay, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I feel like it's a daily exploration of compassion. What does that really feel like? But compassion to me, I have a new relationship to that being with myself. How much am I willing to trust in myself and love myself and be deserving of good things in my life? And I can have compassion for others and I can hold them, but the most important relationship for me to hold is my love for myself first, so that I can really be that light in the world. Because if you're not showing that love and looking at yourself with those eyes of kindness and creating those boundaries to protect your energy and your dreams and your expansion and the way that you serve in the world, you won't have anything left to give. You become just like this empty vessel. And I think it's so important I don't know how I could figure out how to love myself more if I wasn't tested by those people who make me put up those boundaries. So it's kind of like a love-hate relationship, I guess, I have with it.
I like the way you look at that. Well, what would you say to somebody who is listening now and maybe struggling and feeling trapped by their circumstances? What advice would you have for them?
I would advise you to really think about what we talked about with beliefs, and to see if you can find some room in you to create a reframe, to test, to play detective of what's going on in your thoughts. Because we are our thoughts. We are our stories that we tell in our minds. And if you change your beliefs, you change your story and you change your outer experience. So I think the most powerful place to start when you're feeling trapped is just to play detective, to see if you can find the spaces where you're leaning too far into that feeling of trapped, to see if there's any room for you to see the way out, to see if there are any lights that are flashing around you that you may have closed your eyes to. And I think if you just open yourself to being detective first, you start to show yourself the way to baby steps, just A to B steps of how you can kind of move out of that trapped feeling and into a little more openness and expansion. And I think there was a lot of great tips in this podcast today, just around community support, looking for other legs to add to that new table. If you're feeling trapped, I would think about, how do you want to be feeling? If it's not trapped, then what is the way that you want to feel? And how can you support the belief that that's possible for you by looking for proof around you, anywhere you can find it, and playing detective of that? You'll begin to be able to shift those beliefs, which will shift that cycle of potential and action and results.
Awesome. That is such great advice. Thank you so much. This has been really, really good. I feel like you gave, like you said, some really great tips and just super practical things that people can do. Like it's not just, sisterhood, it's schedule it in the calendar and all the table legs. And I'd love to know, where can people go to find out more about you?
I would love to connect with people listening to this. The best way is my website, JeannineYoder.com. That's where I send tons of free videos and content. My passion in life is tools and techniques. So if you like that, I'm always sharing them there at JeannineYoder.com. And then I'm also on MentorMasterclass.com, where I do lots of interviews with celebrity coaches out there and where I teach women who want to become coaches through Mentor Masterclass. So I'm pretty present there, and that would be a great place to find me and come connect.
Wonderful. This will all be in the show notes if you're listening. And Jeannine, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I know people are going to really get so much from this, so it's really nice of you to spend your time here.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you for what you do in this podcast and the insights and just the conversations that you open up to give people more choices. I just believe in you and this work, and I'm so honored to have gotten to share this time with you and just jamming on some of my favorite things.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to A Better Life. You can find all show notes for this episode at rachelroffe.com. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe so you can automatically get access to all new shows. Let's also connect. Just go onto Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram /RachelRofay and we can talk there. The opinions of all guests here are their own, and I'm not necessarily endorsing any of them. I do want to give you perspective though. And always remember, if you